Okay, so now we're going to be implementing our map, and there's basically two steps to this. We're going to be using Mapbox, so you need to sign up for an account for Mapbox, and we're going to be using a package called React Map GL, which is an API for Mapbox. So we'll use that to display the map. Now, in order to display the marker where we want, it needs to be in the latitude and longitude of the property, which obviously we don't have the user put into the database, so we have to use geocoding, which is taking the address and getting the latitude and longitude from that. So we'll be using Google Geocoding, so you'll need to get a geocode API key from Google Cloud. And then we'll use the React geocode package to actually do the geocoding in the component. All right, so the first step is to sign up for Mapbox. Just go to login, sign up, verify your email, log in, and then you'll see a page like this. And you should be able to create a token, and it'll look something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this one. Make sure you use your own. I'm going to delete that one after. And then go to your .env, and let's say next underscore public underscore Mapbox Mapbox underscore token, and then paste that in. Now we also need our let's say next underscore public underscore Google underscore geocode or geocoding API key. So to get that, you want to go to your console and then API and services. And then if you go to enabled API and services, we're already there, and then enable and then search for geocoding API. So this right here. And you just want to make sure you enable it. Okay, once we do that, we should be able to get an API key. And there it is. So we're going to copy that, and we're going to put that right here. Okay, so now we'll close that up. So now we have both the keys that we need, so we can close that. Now we need to install three dependencies actually. So down in the terminal here, let's say npm install react-map-gl, and then mapbox-gl, and then react-geocode. And be sure it's exact, because there's a lot of other packages with similar names. There's React Geocoder, there's like React Map, so just make sure that these three are the exact of what I have here. So we'll install those, and then we can create our property map component. So let's go to components, create a new file called property map.jsx, and we'll say RAFCE, property map, save it, and let's bring it into our property details. So down at the bottom of property details JSX, there's a div with the ID of map. So that we want to replace with property map. And then pass in property as a prop. So property, and then make sure that that's being imported at the top. Okay, mine just auto imported. So now if you go to a listing, you should see property map right here. All right, so we can close the details, and now we're going to work in this file. So there's quite a few things we need to import, so I'm just going to paste it in, and you guys can copy it, or you can get it from the final project. I'll just go over it real quick. So use effect and use state, and we also need to make this client, so let's say use client. And then we're bringing in the Mapbox GL CSS, so the styling, map, and marker are coming from React Map GL. And then set defaults and from address, these are two functions we're going to use from React Geocode. Set defaults is where we pass our key, and from address will take the address for the property and turn it into a latitude and longitude. And then just our spinner image and the pin image that we're going to use for the marker. So that's what we're bringing in. And then for the state, let's before we do that, let's pass in our prop object with the property, because that's how we have access to the address and all that stuff. And then for the state, we're going to add latitude and longitude. So let's say lat and set lat. Use state, and that'll be null by default. And then we'll copy that down, and this is going to be Longe or LNG. Let's change that to LNG. And then the viewport is going to be an object in our state. So let's say viewport, and then set viewport, and set that to, let's say, use state, and then pass in an object where we have latitude, which will be 0 by default, and then longitude will also be 0. And then we have the zoom level. So you can change these if you want. I'm going to choose 12 for the zoom. And then width is going to be 100%. And then the height of the map will do 500 pixels. Okay, and then the last piece of state is just going to be loading. So loading and set loading. Set that to use state, and as usual, we'll set it to true by default. All right, so up to this point, we shouldn't have any issues. Okay, good. Now, we need to set our defaults. So if we look at the React map, I'm sorry, the geocoder, there's this set defaults right here. So I'm going to grab that. And let's put that right here. And I'm going to use US for the region. I'm just going to get rid of these comments. And then our API key goes here. So we're going to replace this with process.env.next public. And this is going to be the Google geocoding API key. Okay, and then to fetch the coordinates, so basically we want to pass the address into that from address. So we want that to do that when the page loads. So we're going to add our use effect and add just an empty dependency array. And then let's create an asynchronous function. So we'll call this fetch chords. Set that to async. Okay, and then in here we're going to create a response variable, and then we're going to await on that from address, which just makes a fetch request to the Google geocoding API, and it takes in the address. So in here, let's pass in some backticks, and then we're going to put in the property dot location dot street, and remember the property is coming in as a prop to this component. And then I'm just going to copy this because after the street we want the city. After the city we want the state. And then after the state we want the zip code. All right, so that will get the response. Then we should be able to destructure lat and LNG. We should be able to get that from res.results. If you've ever used the geocoding API, this will look familiar. It's the results array first item, and then geometry, and then location. All right, so let's just see if that works, if we can get that. So let's console log lat and longe, and hopefully we can get the latitude and longitude. If we refresh here, and that's let's see, why isn't that? Oh, we didn't. I keep doing that. I always do that. We got to call the damn function. Okay, so try it again. Cannot read properties of undefined. Fetch chords. What did I do? So we're calling from address. Let's see. Are we getting anything from that? So results, and in here is the first item, geometry, location, and lat and longe. So did I misspell? Oh, I did. Of course I did. All right, so now we should get the latitude and longitude. Let's reload. And there we go. Good. So next we're going to come down here to our return. And actually right above that return, we would just want to say if it's loading, then let's return a spinner, and we'll pass in our loading state. Okay, so there we go, and it keeps spinning because I never stopped the loading. So let's we also never set the latitude and longitude. So here we want to set lat to lat, and then set LNG to LNG, and set the viewport to an object where we spread across the current viewport, and then set the latitude to lat, set the longitude to LNG. Okay, and then we set loading to false. All right, so now, there we go. So now we just need to display it. So down here, let's return, and we're going to say if not loading, then let's get rid of this stuff. Okay, so if not loading, then we're going to show our map, and we brought that in from the Mapbox GL, and that takes in a few things. So let's pass in the Mapbox access token. So I'm going to set that to process.env.next underscore public underscore mapbox underscore token. Okay, and then it takes in this map lib, and that's going to be, we're going to import the Mapbox GL that we installed. So right here, Mapbox GL. Then we want an initial view state, which is going to be an object with longitude, which will be the longe in our state, and then oh, you know what, this should be, it's an object, so this should be 2 curly braces like that. And then we want the latitude, which will be lat, and then zoom, we'll set that to 15. Okay, and then underneath that is going to be style, and this is all in the documentation. So this is going to be 2 curly braces, and we'll give it, we'll say width 100%, and height we'll say 500. All right, and then finally we need map style, because there's different types of styles that you can add. So the one we're going to use is going to be mapbox //styles, and then /mapbox /streets-v9. Okay, so that, and then we're going to have a closing tag. So /map. All right, so let's see if that displays, and it does. It shows the map. And this is where, this is the Los Angeles one. Let's go to the Boston one just because I'm familiar with that area. Okay, good. Now, there's no marker. That's where we have to use this that we brought in. So that's going to go inside of the map. So here, let's say marker, and that's going to have a closing tag. And we're going to just add in a few things here. We need the longitude where we want to put the marker, which is going to be our longe state. Latitude is going to be our lat state. And then the anchor is going to be bottom. and then whatever we want as the marker will go in the middle here. I could, like, if I say hello, you can see hello right there because that's where it is. So I want to use the pin image that we brought in. So let's say image, and source is going to be pin that we brought in up top. And then we'll just do alt, we'll just say location, and then width, let's do 40, and height, we'll do 40. And there we go. All right, so we have a map with the little pin. Let's go to another one. Okay. These addresses, I'm not sure if these are actually real. Pretty sure I got them from ChatGPT. But yeah, I mean, we're getting the latitude and longitude, so they should be fairly accurate. Urban Avenue, like, yeah, like I'm not sure if that actually exists. I don't know if it does, but it should be fairly accurate if it's an actual address. All right, so now we have the map. There is a couple other things that I want to add as far as the geocoding. If it's not an address that can be converted to latitude and longitude, then we kind of need to handle that. So we'll do that in the next video because this one's getting kind of long.